Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Nikit. I welcome you all to Medic's Desk. Let us study tumor lysis syndrome. So, what are the differences between normal and a cancerous cell? A malignant cell is a big cell with very big nucleus. They are continuously dividing cell and has got a disorganized arrangement. There are also variation in their shape and size, and they have lost the normal features. In 1929, Berna and Pollock they described tumor lysis syndrome in patients of CML who were treated with radiotherapy. They described it as a metabolic syndrome due to breakdown of the cell. We all know what are the characteristics of tumor lysis syndrome. That is hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, hypocalcemia, and hyperuricemia. And it must be remembered as it is asked as a common MCQ. In first few days of treatment of care like cancer, we can see tumor lysis syndrome has developed. But exact definition of tumor lysis syndrome was given in 2004 by two people, that is Cairo and Bishop. They divided it into clinical and laboratory TLS. Let us first see lab TLS features. To say a patient has got laboratory TLS, more than or equal to like two or more of the following features should be there, and the features should be like 3 days prior to start of treatment or within 7 days of the start of treatment. We can see the uric acid, potassium and phosphate, there should be rise of 25% from the baseline, whereas for calcium there should be 25% decrease in the value from the baseline. Let us remember these values because they are very important. Uric acid, there should be rise of more than or equal to 476 micromole per liter. Potassium more than or equal to 6 millimole per liter. Phosphate in children more than 2.1 millimole per liter. In adults more than or equal to 1.45 millimole per liter. Whereas calcium, it should be less than or equal to 1.75 millimole per liter. To say a patient has clinical tumor lysis syndrome, there should be at least one feature that should be present. Creatinine should be more than or equal to of 1.5 of the upper limit that is given in the value. And there should be any cardiac arrhythmias, sudden death or seizures. Any one of the following feature present, we can say the patient is having clinical tumor lysis syndrome. Let us see the clinical features. The patient may have following symptoms. He can have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, anorexia, lethargy. He may also develop any dysarrhythmias or syncope or tetany. Patient may also develop acute renal failure and death. Very important thing to remember is pathophysiology of tumor lysis syndrome. So we all know a cell is composed of a very big nucleus and cytoplasm. Nucleus is mainly made up of DNA and the cytoplasm is rich in phosphates, potassium and cytokines. So what will happen when a cell break down? The nucleic acids, they will be converted into xanthine. Xanthine with the help of xanthine oxidase will be converted to uric acid and lead to excretion, and it will be excreted. If increase in uric acid crystals is there, there is tubulopathy leading to acute kidney injury. Phosphates and potassium will be high when they release, they are high in cytoplasm. When released outside, they will cause hyperphosphatemia and hyperkalemia. Phosphates will bind with calcium and lead to formation of calcium phosphate crystals leading to acute kidney injury. There are a lot of cytokines in the cell. They will cause hypotension and inflammatory response, ultimately leading to acute kidney injury. So, the first observed effect of tumor lysis syndrome is hyperkalemia. It must be remembered. And acute kidney injury is due to two features. One is formation of calcium phosphate crystals that we have seen in the previous slides, and formation of uric acid crystals. Uric acid crystallization is accelerated if there is underlying acidosis. What are the risk factors of developing tumor lysis syndrome? If there is a high tumor burden, the high grade tumors with rapid cell turnover, any pre-existing renal impairment, advanced age, if the treatment that we use is very potent and it's the cell cycle specific agents, with use of any other drug that can lead to a rise in the uric acid levels. So what prophylaxis should we use in treatment of tumor lysis syndrome? Generally, patients we can see having tumor lysis syndrome Basically, clinical tumor lysis syndrome are less, that is 3 to 6% of the patient, that too with the high grade tumors, and only one third of the patients they will end up into hemodialysis unit, and the mortality is reduced nowadays to 15%. So the key to the management of tumor lysis syndrome is hyperhydration and use of uricosuric drugs or rasburicase. Even though we take a lot of measures, the TLS cannot be eradicated completely. This was mentioned by Gallery et al. In 2013 in one of his very nice papers. So let us see what exactly uricosuric drugs do. Allopurinol, we all know, is a xanthine oxidase inhibitor. It will inhibit the step of formation of hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid. So there will be no formation of uric acid if we use allopurinol, and there will be accumulation of xanthine and hypoxanthine. These two are more water soluble compared to uric acid, and they have no effect on preformed uric acid. That should be remembered. What rasburicase does is uric acid is converted to allantoin by rasburicase, and allantoin is 5 times more soluble compared to allopurinol. Let us just see the features of allopurinol. We have already seen it reduces the production of uric acid, also less conversion of hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid, but no effect on uric acid formation, and it's a xanthine oxidase inhibitor. Allopurinol, it cannot be given into two conditions. One is renal failure, and if a patient is allergic to allopurinol. In such cases, we can use either febuxostat or rasburicase. A wonder drug, rasburicase. It's a urate oxidase, and urate is converted to allantoin. We have seen it's like 5 times more soluble compared to uric acid, and it generally acts on the formed uric acid. This gives us an added advantage as compared to allopurinol. Let us see the risk stratification of the disease. We must all assess before start of treatment any evidence of laboratory or clinical TLS at diagnosis itself, and if the tumor itself confers high risk, they should be closely monitored. And if there are pre-existing renal failure, advanced age, renal involvement, or efficacy of the drug that we use is very potent, the patient should be categorized as high risk disease and should be monitored closely. The management in the flowchart is mentioned. We'll be covering into the following lecture. Let us see it later. So prophylaxis with hydration should be remembered. Prophylaxis with allopurinol and prophylaxis with rasburicase must be remembered. So with hydration, we'll see. So our aim is to hydrate the patient with hyperhydration, that is 3 liters per 24 hours according to the body surface area. There was a traditional practice to use alkalizing agents into the urine, because we have seen initially that acidic urine will cause increase in uric acid crystallization and acute kidney injury. But it was noted later that when we use alkalizers in urine, there will be hypoxanthine and xanthine precipitates, and it will further worsen the condition, hence it is not recommended. Highest risk of developing TLS is in following diseases. It should be kept in mind: the AML and ALL, diseases like Burkitt's lymphoma or lymphoblastic lymphoma with a very high LDH value, and high grade lymphomas. So let us see prophylaxis with allopurinol. It's a very important drug, and the prophylaxis must be remembered. The standard recommendation schedule is 200 to 400 mg per meter square per day, and generally given into 1 to 3 divided doses for adults, and up to maximum 800 mg can be given. In children, the dosage is 300 to 450 mg per meter square per day in 3 divided doses, and maximum dose that can be given is 400 mg daily. In infants of less than 10 kg, the dose is 3.3 mg per kg every 8th hourly. Allopurinol, it must be given up to 7 days after start of chemotherapy. As we have seen, the clinical TLS, generally we have seen the definition, it is prior to 3 days of start of treatment or up to 7 days of the treatment. Hence, it must be remembered. So, to remember prophylaxis with rasburicase, Rasburicase is given in the diseases with high tumor burden. In G6PD deficiency, we cannot give rasburicase, and that's the one of the disadvantage of this drug. Dosing is generally a single fixed dose of 3 mg per meter square. 3 mg can be given. It comes in a vial strength of 1.5 mg, so we need to give 2 vials in 100 ml over half an hour. We should also closely monitor any biochemical or clinical TLS. In children, the dosage is 2 mg, 0.2 mg per kg per day. So there are following recommendations, and I have not changed even a single word from them. They are very important to remember word by word. So patients due to receive chemotherapy for any hematological malignancy should have a risk assessment of our TLS. Low risk patient can be managed with careful attention to the monitoring and measurement of fluid status and lab results with low threshold for recourse to intravenous fluids and consideration of allopurinol if needed. Intermediate risk patients should be offered up to 7 days of allopurinol prophylaxis along with increased hydration post initiation of treatment or until risk of TLS has resolved. High risk patients should be offered prophylaxis with rasburicase along with increased hydration. Rasburicase should be avoided in patients with G6PD deficiency, and such patients should be treated with fluids and allopurinol and monitored carefully. This point must be remembered. Urate assay. When the patient is receiving rasburicase, they must be sent to laboratory on ice so that we prevent any false low assay results. This step is not followed at every center and must be remembered, as we will get a false uric acid level and we will be in dilemma of the treatment of tumor lysis syndrome. In high risk adults, in absence of established clinical or lab TLS can be prevented in majority of the patients using a single fixed dose of 3 mg rasburicase, but this must be followed by careful monitoring of clinical and biochemical parameters with repeat dosing if required. In high-risk children, in absence of established clinical or lab TLS, prophylaxis can be achieved in many patients using a single fixed dose of rasburicase of 0.2 mg per kg. Treatment needs to be followed by close lab and clinical features for evidence of progressive TLS. If clinical TLS develops, rasburicase at a dose of 0.2 mg per kg per day should be given, while it seems reasonable to use as an adult a fixed dose of 3 mg rasburicase. It is not possible to make a firm recommendation on basis of current evidence. All these recommendations should be remembered word by word. When rasburicase is being used in the treatment of prophylaxis of TLS, addition of allopurinol is unnecessary and has a potential to reduce the effectiveness of rasburicase. Alkalization of urine is not recommended in TLS prophylaxis. Let us see how we treat a patient or where already TLS has been established. So the principle is basically approach is multidisciplinary. Basically the involvement of hematologist, nephrologist and ICU team. Clinical condition of the patient, it can change very quickly and hence he should be monitored. We have seen already that 15% of the patient they can undergo death. The patients will require intensive care monitoring, and it is essential to have a high index of suspicion of TLS. First thing to observe is the fluid balance, because we need to maintain a very high like proper urine output. I'll tell you the targets of it. Our aim is to prevent uric acid crystallization and calcium phosphate crystallization, hence to prevent acute kidney injuries. And if they build up, there will be a vicious cycle which will lead to renal failure and death. Our aim is to hydrate the patient with 3 liters per meter square every 24 hours, and aim of urine output will be in infants more than 4 ml per kg per hour, and for older patients 100 ml per meter square per hour. In a patient who is having any underlying renal or cardiac disease, we should always observe for any fluid overload. Our choice of IV fluid should be a balanced isotonic solution, and there should be no added potassium in this fluid, must be remembered. Output must be monitored every hourly, and the documentation of fluid loss should be measured. Even diarrhea and vomiting should be measured. We should measure daily weight of the patient so as to see whether the patient has gained any weight or not. It will give us an idea of fluid accumulation in the body. So, decreasing urine output is an alarming sign for us, and it can indicate any worsening renal failure or fluid overload may develop in such patients. Only in such patient we can use furosemide 0.5 mg per kg intravenously, but it should be used only as an emergency treatment and should not be used in regular patients. This may also promote tubular uric acid deposition and lead to a worsening of the disease. Less efficacious in the presence of renal tubular blockages, and the presence of significant fluid overload needs a nephrology advice. What is the management of hyperuricemia? Allopurinol, it does not influence the breakdown of uric acid. We have already described all these things. So hence we use rasburicase. It's a recombinant urate oxidase, and it will convert the uric acid into allantoin, which is more soluble. But if the patient is having any G6PD deficiency, we cannot use it, and then we have to use allopurinol and hemodialysis. What is the management of hyperphosphatemia and hypocalcemia? If hydration and timely administration of rasburicase is not going to prevent significant hyperphosphatemia, it will be hard to control the phosphate levels other than by dialysis. This point should be remembered because it is asked in so many MCQs. The temporary use of aluminum hydroxide like 50 to 150 mg per kg per day has been described. It comes by name of these are basically phosphate binders, and there can be some asymptomatic hypocalcemia in the patients of TLS, but though the level has fallen of less than 25% below the baseline, they may just need cardiac monitoring. Symptomatic hypocalcemia is there. The patients can develop arrhythmia, seizures, and tetany. So we can give them calcium support here, but our aim is not to normalize the calcium level. It's just to treat the underlying arrhythmia, seizures, or tetany. This point must be remembered because at a lot of centers in or in ICUs, the physician may not be aware that the hypocalcemia has to be treated or not, so they must be made aware. Even though the values of calcium are less than 25% of the baseline, calcium should not be corrected. Only calcium should be supported in symptomatic patients. Let us come to the treatment of hyperkalemia, that is very important. It can generally lead to life-threatening dysarrhythmias, must be remembered, and cardiac monitoring is must in these patients at the start of treatment and regularly. Potassium level of more than 7 millimole per liter is a medical emergency and dialysis is required in such conditions. Acute cardiotoxicity should be treated with short infusions of calcium gluconate, and there should be continuous ECG monitoring. Nebulization or IV salbutamol can be effective and can be used as infusions. We can also use GI drips that we commonly use in treatment of hyperkalemia. So dialysis is very important if there is acute kidney injury, no urine output. So uric oxidase therapy, it appears to reduce the need of dialysis now. We have seen in the previous slide that just 1 to 3% of the patient they need dialysis nowadays. It is given when the measures fail to prevent the renal deterioration and any significant overload of fluids, hyperkalemia, hyperuricemia, or hyperphosphatemia, or hypocalcemia has developed, then only we are using it. Peritoneal dialysis is not at all indicated. Again, there are some recommendations. I would prefer that all of you must remember this because in super specialty exams and in NEET exam, these questions are asked. So the management of established TLS requires a multidisciplinary approach with involvement of hematologist, nephrologist, and ICU care physician. If the facilities are not available locally for intensive management and monitoring, consideration should be given to transfer of the patient to ICU or a high dependent facility or a hematology care centers with a good unit. Balanced solution or isotonic solution should be administered in a at the rate of 3 liter per meter square every 24 hours, and to keep urine output of in infants and adults, that we have seen in infants is more than 4 ml per kg per hour, and in adults 100 ml per meter square per hour. Potassium must not be added into these fluids. No alkalization of urine is recommended. Allopurinol is useful in prophylactic setting, but it is not a drug of choice in established TLS except in the presence of G6PD deficiency or allergy to rasburicase. This has been asked as an MCQ in multiple exams. If there is absence of contraindications, patient with established TLS should be given rasburicase at a dose of 0.2 mg per kg per day as a 30-minute infusion. The duration of treatment should be determined by clinical response, must be remembered. In patients who are asymptomatic, hypocalcemia should not be treated, but only if symptoms are there, we can treat the patient, and our aim is not to normalize the calcium, just to treat the symptoms. Patients with potassium level of more than 6 millimole per liter, they experience any, like in this patient, cardiac monitoring should be done very regularly at the start of treatment, and the calcium level should be monitored and treated accordingly. Intractable fluid overload, hyperkalemia, hyperuricemia, hyperphosphatemia, or hypocalcemia are the indications of renal dialysis. Must be remembered. Peritoneal dialysis is not recommended for treatment of TLS. Must be always remembered. Dialysis should continue until there is an adequate recovery of renal function, resolution of severe electrolyte imbalance, and recovery of urine output. So, what are the important things that we should remember? TLS is a preventable disease, and it's in most of the cases, this is very important to remember. There should be alert in the patients who are having high tumor burden overload. Allopurinol is a uricosuric drug, can be used in prophylaxis. Rasburicase can be used in pre-existing disease or high tumor burden diseases. No alkalizing agent should be used because it will worsen our disease condition. Calcium should not be corrected until the patient is justified. Dialysis should be done in the patients of the conditions that we have discussed, and if there is a TLS, it should be a multidisciplinary approach. Thank you very much for your time. See you in the next class.